Morning, everybody. I'm Jean Warnock. I'm one of the co-founders of the Family Success Institute. Hope everybody's doing well this morning and you have some nice weather up there. What I'd like to do is introduce you to the other co-founder, Tom Blattner, if you don't know him, which I think all of you probably do. Tom?
Thanks, Jean. Good morning, everybody. And I want to, say I'm really glad to be back. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. I have recovered, and I thank those of you who wish me well. And I want to thank Tim for doing a yeoman's job and stepping into the meeting. First of all, just as usual at the beginning of the meeting, I'd like to mention, I usually mention a couple of folks who we want to highlight here. We have pretty good turnout from county government for this meeting. We have Debbie Ann Anderson, who's the Director of Human Services from Union County, who will be you'll be hearing from a little bit later. Mary Grace Billick, my friend from Mercer County, my home county, has joined us. We have the new dynamic team from Monmouth County, Desiree White and Nicole Sear have joined us. And although she couldn't be here today, the new Director of Human Services from Passaic County, Artie Akar, sends her greetings. So we're really excited about county government joining into the learning community. Kathy Maloney from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, greetings. We're so glad you could be here as a guest. And Lucy Vandenberg from the Schumann Fund, congratulations on your new appointment. Your predecessor, Annette, was a great friend of ours, and we're looking forward to collaborating with you as well. So jumping into our agenda, because we've got a lot to cover today, including several exciting guests who are actually the co-sponsors of our bill. The AA28, which is the Community Recovery and Family Success Act, are going to be joining us in a while. So why don't we jump right in? First of all, Dave Ellis, I know you have to leave soon, so I wanted to offer you a moment to offer us a couple of words of encouragement. Dave?
Thanks. Thanks, Tom, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the offer, Tom. I really do enjoy coming because I get to see, first of all, I get to see a lot of folks that I don't see very often. And it reminds me that I need to be in more contact with people. Second, it tells me that there is still the desire for people to dig deeper into this work. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the Executive Director of the Office of Resilience. Just a couple of quick things that I wanted to mention. Tom, I want to openly acknowledge your participation in helping us. And David, I think you said that David Armstrong was on the call also today?
Yes, he is.
There he is. Okay. Have been very actively involved in helping us complete a strategic planning process for the office. We're almost done with it. And hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll be able to release that plan so that everyone knows what the intentions are for this office going forward. It's pretty in-depth, and I hate strategic planning. I do, I'll be honest with you. It's not my favorite thing to do. But for the first time, because we have people who are outside of state government helping to guide this process, it was a much more enjoyable process for me. So hearing from other people. The other thing I'll tell you is that you keep hearing me talk about this microgrant process that we're trying to get off the ground at DCF, and we actually did. We selected 3 agencies across New Jersey. Each of them will soon get $1 million to use over the next 2 years to fund community developed and led ideas. Those 3 agencies are CUMAC in the north. And I have to look up at my map to make sure I get this right.
Norwest Cap in the central.
Yes, you are. I see Laura up there. I see you waving up there, Laura. Norwest Cap in central and Ascenda in south. They will be coordinating the disbursement of those funds to small. And the point of this process was to fund small agencies who aren't involved in the state grant process and individuals who have ideas. And so those three agencies will be soliciting ideas from the community itself, and we'll make a selection on what's going to be funded going forward. One of the other things that I'm exceptionally proud of is that we finally have gotten this thing called the People's Gathering has gained its own footing. In our statewide action plan, we said we would stay connected to community, and that we wanted annually to tell the community what the office had done and to get input on how to make this process and this action plan better for the people of the state of New Jersey. We're currently looking at the third week of September. The keynotes that we are pursuing at this point is Sean Genwright, who has what is referred to as the Flourish Agenda, which is around healing-centered practices. The last book, the newest, The Four Pillars, is now a bestseller. If you go out, you'll find it. Sean is one of the most engaging people that I have ever met. So I'm anticipating something really special from him. The second keynote that we're looking at is Howard Stevenson from Penn University. For those of you who are not familiar with Howard, you may know his brother Brian Stevenson, who runs the Innocence Project and also is the leader of the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, commonly referred to as the Lynching Museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And then the third piece in that is a group called Conscious Kids out of Asbury Park. And we're hoping to have them. And it's a special day because it's designed literally to have individuals that are there to call the conference workshops. We're not bringing in, it's not pre-designed. And so if anyone in this group wanted to call a specific conversation, Tom, if you wanted to have a specific conversation you wanted to call, you could certainly do that. It's virtual. We're looking at approximately 1,000 individuals for this day. And like I said, we've turned it over to Stockton University to help us pull this all together, mainly because I don't have enough hands. And so those are the three quick things I wanted to talk about, Tom, just to let folks know that we're still active out here. We haven't gone anywhere. Thank you.
Terrific, Dave. Thanks for all that information.
Can I just throw one last thing out? I have a new executive assistant, and I don't know if she logged on. I asked her if she did. And Kelly, if you're on here, please unmute and say hello. Kelly Watson comes to us from the governor's office. She spent 9 years there, and today is her 4th day on the job. So she may log in at some point in time, and you'll probably see her face when I'm not available. Thanks, Tom. Sorry.
Terrific, terrific. And thank you, Dave, for all that, and anything we can do to support your efforts, we will, which sort of segues into the beginning of our agenda, because one of the things that we have decided as a institute from the beginning is that we are not interested in competing with anybody. Our goal is to collaborate and support anybody that has common beliefs. And we've had one very successful collaboration with Kathy Rowe and Parents Inc. with their parent leadership breakfast, where the First Lady came, and it was really a stirring event. And what we'd like to do is to have a couple of our partners talk about some upcoming events that they're in the process of putting together, which the Family Success Institute is supporting. So why don't we start with Caitlin Mulcahy, who is the new director of the Center for Autism and Early Childhood Mental Health at Montclair State. Everybody knows that Jerry has retired and has left the center in the more than able hands of Caitlin Mulcahy. So Caitlin, can you share a little bit about the conference that you are in the midst of planning?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. And thanks to you all, because our group is a co-sponsor of this conference alongside many other providers in New Jersey. This will be our 10th annual Tadawida Children's Conference Foundation, and it is inspired by the Tadawida Children's Fund, which was started by Herb and Andrew Owita upon the death of their son after 9/11. who himself, his name is Todd, he struggled with pretty significant anxiety as a child. So their choice to honor his memory was to really support the workers who support young child mental health. And so we started this conference 10 years ago, and it has been meant to bring together all of us who work in a multidisciplinary way to support the early relational, emotional, developmental health of our youngest children. And so we're excited this year to be back in person. We had a very successful online conference at which Tom was a speaker last year, but we're back in person this year with a live stream option. This conference will be Friday, May 20th, starting at 8:30. So going 8:30 to 3:30, and has 3 speakers and 1 award. So our commissioner of the Department of Children and Families will be receiving the Todd Owita Children's Hero Award from the Owita Foundation. And she'll have some opportunity to speak about the work that's happening at the department right now. And then we have 3 speakers who will be speaking around our conference theme, which is called Moving Through: How Attending to the Body Can Transform Learning, Healing, and Restoration in Stressful Times. So we have a speaker from the University of Michigan who will start with the foundation of infant mental health work, recognizing the importance of relationships towards supporting play in young children and curiosity. Our second speaker will be speaking specifically about the importance of touch in young children and the neurobiological connection there around restoration, resilience, and exploration. And then our third speaker will speak about embodied knowing, sort of how do we help children know that we're feeling with them, especially at times when they might feel uncertain or anxious. So it will include some music, some movement of the participants. So we always have a bit of a creative activity when we're in person as well. So we're trying to engage really all centers of learning of our community. And the Owitas are also very focused on making sure that the food is excellent, so people really feel nourished when they come. So please save the date there for May 20th. The registration should be live tomorrow. So hopefully everyone will be able to see it. I'll be sure that this group receives the flyer. Thanks, Tom.
Caitlin, thank you so much. And I've been going to these conferences for years. They are just amazing. You know, in every way, they're both very informative, but it's so inspirational. So I hope, you know, I hope people can join in, and we're so happy that we can, you know, be of support to you, Caitlin, in any way we can. Before we get to the next announcement about a conference, speaking of children's heroes, I think Commissioner Byer has actually joined us. And Christine, you want to say hello and say a few words? And we're so glad you could be with us.
I don't need to say a few words other than hello, good morning. It's nice to be with all of you. So I think I missed the last meeting, and I always enjoy this meeting. And that's it. Lots of great things happening. And I'm looking forward to the Todd Owita conference. I agree, Tom, that it always is a very good conference and lots of great information presented. So thank you, Caitlin. And that's it. I'm not prepared, Tom, sorry.
You're always prepared. Well, thanks. And we're really glad that you're here. Karen Andrade Mims has been leading our Fathers and Families work group, and she has a really great announcement to make about a conference that she's planning that the Family Success Institute will also be supporting and partnering with her. Karen?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Please forgive my voice. I'm getting over a cold, but I'm excited to share. And I think we've talked about this briefly in other meetings, but now it's actually, everything is actually coming to fruition. We are going to be hosting a statewide, the Father Center of New Jersey is going to be hosting a statewide fatherhood conference. The date is November 3rd, and it will be held at the Professional Training Institute, the State Professional Training Institute outside of New Brunswick. And we're really excited about A, letting you all know, and B, having many of you help participate with us. Tom, thank you so much for the support from FSI. And also I'd like to shout out support from the Office of Family Voice. I've been working really closely with Blake to kind of pull things together for our planning. The theme of the conference is Forging Stronger Fathers and Families, building bridges in New Jersey. So we really do want to make this about fatherhood. We want to make this about father engagement and father inclusion. We're hoping to have 2 panel sessions as well as a keynote speaker, and we will also have workshops. And so to that end, what I'd like to do, I need to make sure that I get the learning community list. I'm not sure that I have the list of all of our members from this group, but I want to make sure I do get that, because we're in the process of sending out what we're calling our RFP to ask folks to submit workshop presentations. So Tom, who would be the best person for me to connect with to make sure I get everyone on this group?
We'll connect with me and we'll make sure you get it.
Okay, that would be great. It will be a full day conference, 8:30 to 2:30, again on Thursday, November 3rd, and continental breakfast and lunch will be provided. So we're really excited. Kathy and I have worked in previous years with the feds around pulling off a fatherhood conference, which probably for the last 5 years, maybe 6 years hasn't occurred. So we're really happy to bring this back to the forefront, not only for those of us in this group, but statewide. We're reaching out to a connection that I have in Pennsylvania to bring his contingency to New Jersey. And certainly I'm looking to all of you to, again, either participate actively or at least attend and support our efforts. So thank you so much. We want to have resource tables available as well. So if doing a workshop is not something that you're interested in, there will be an opportunity to have tables available so that information can be passed out to our attendees. So any questions, please feel free to email me. As Tom said, I am chairing the Fathers and Families work group. And so we'll be talking about that in the midst of our other conversations in the work group committee. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Karen. And I think that, one of the roles that we are hoping to play at the Institute is just to sort of help snowballs develop. And I think that the more that people are learning about others' work, and nobody has a monopoly on the leadership of this work, it's got to be everybody working together. And we're just finding that, the partners that we can collaborate with are just absolutely amazing. And we're humbled to be part of all of this. So thank you so much, everybody. Any other announcements that anybody wants to make before we move on?
Yes, Tom,
Maureen.
I have an announcement. Good morning, everyone. Parents Inc. will be having a mini conference at the DCF Professional Training Center, June the 3rd. This will be our first in-person event, so we're very excited to kind of move us from isolation into a gathering again. We will be having workshops, we will be having resource tables and workshops for the parents statewide to just continue to stimulate them and the things that they've been going through and making them aware of what's happening in the state of New Jersey. So if you want more information, we will send you a save the date. If you would email me, I will put my email in the chat. And thanks again.
Thanks so much, Doreen, for that. And your events are always as inspiring as everybody else's. So, we're really looking forward to that as well.
Can I just jump in with one more announcement?
No, Kathy, I don't.
Sorry. Keensburg Father Time will be holding their fishing derby in Keensburg on the beach on March 24th. It's a Saturday. If anybody would like to join us. It's
May 24th.
May
Not
24th.
March.
Yes, sorry, May 24th. It's an amazing event. Fathers, kids, lunch, fish, sandcastles. But if you're interested in looking at a really parent-led organization running something, join us on that day.
Terrific. Anybody else in terms of activities or announcements or anything?
Yeah, just one last one. The New York Trust, we are doing our annual summit on safe and supportive learning environments. I'm just going to put a quick write-up in the chat. Well, so it's 2 paragraphs. I'll just put it in the chat. People could eyeball it. but it's virtual and it's May 10, 11, and 12 in the morning hours.
Terrific. Thanks, Ron. And we can, if people share the exact information, we can get it out to all the learning community members and people who join the call, but that's terrific. And I think that, together, all these various activities do represent, what we're trying to support, which is a holistic approach involving people who don't normally have a voice in progress. So, we're really excited to be part of all of this. Before we get on to the legislative update, I want to mention a friend that I've developed, David Armstrong, and I have worked with Dave Ellis on his strategic plan. And Dave is also a resident of Mercer County and an advocate. And David, I hate to put you on the spot, but if you could just mention a couple of words about how we have partnered up to try to bring a perspective, I would love it.
Thanks, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Tom, actually from Essex County, not Mercer. I love Mercer County, don't get me wrong.
Oh,
that's where Farverson and everything else is at. I just want to state that, as a parent advocate, as a parent leader, father and grandfather, Tom and I have been working very diligently in bringing fatherhood to the early childhood front space. Not very friendly when it comes to the children's system of care. When it comes to fathers, we're not intentionally or authentically engaged, I don't think personally. So we've been working to make that happen and stuff. And I just like to thank FSI, and I like to thank Ms. Menz, because actually I was a platinum dad some years back. So I appreciate being around and being invited to the table. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks, David. Even though you're not a Mercer County person, I love you. I love you anyway. So, Timothy, why don't we begin the legislative discussion? And I think that will actually lead us right into our guests arriving.
Excellent. And thank you, Tom. And even more important, thank all of you for finding time, making time, and continuing to join this really exciting collaborative conversation. For those of you who are here for the first time, if there are some, welcome. I have to reinforce this every time. It is the collective energy and effort of this learning community that is propelling all the work that we're doing at the Family Success Institute. The concept of people gathering, not necessarily in what I would describe as their lane of particular endeavor or their region of particular location, but rather coming together, as Tom said, around holistic collective impact and a recognition, which is absolutely essential, that if we're to really instill family success, we have to work together and bring all the resources to all the individuals in a family in a meaningful, sensitive, and realistic fashion, because on their own and in isolation, they don't provide what families need to succeed. And it is at the core of the Family Success Institute, your presence here in our meetings, in our work groups, which many of you have volunteered and spent hours doing. All of that work effort is what is bringing us success as an organization in drawing attention, value, and resources to this exercise. So that's the introduction to what I think is a great legislative update. We, with the help of many learning community members, drafted 2 bills over a year ago. One, the Bill of Rights for infants, children, youth, and families, and one, the Community Recovery and Family Success Act. They were introduced in the prior legislative session in both chambers. And here we are just months into a new legislative session, and we have great sponsors of the Community Recovery and Family Success Act in both the Senate and the Assembly. And we have the Children's Bill of Rights introduced in the in both the Assembly and the Senate. I have to correct myself. The Community Recovery and Family Success Act, we have sponsors pending in the Senate, and we expect it will be introduced in May, because that's the next time that bills can be permitted, as Senate sessions are required in order to introduce an actual piece of legislation. But Senator Teresa Ruiz, Senator Gopal, Senator Gill are all sponsors of the Children's Bill of Rights. And as I expect we will hear shortly from the two great sponsors in the Assembly of the Community Recovery and Family Success Act, Siobhan DeSumpter from Passaic County and Reginald Atkins from Union County are both prime sponsors of that bill. And in the Assembly, the Bill of Rights for Infants, Children, Youth, and Families has been introduced by Angela McKnight, Assemblywoman from Hudson County. All this is happening because of relationships that these individuals have with members of the learning community. That's how we got our sponsors. And in many instances, the bills themselves are beginning to draw attention so that they are introduced without having an actual formal conversation with us, although we inform them as frequently as he can. The language and tone of those bills reflects community voice, community direction, and it is coming through you. So thank you all for that great effort. At the same time, we're cultivating bipartisan support of this bill, and it's going very well. I would expect when we meet again, which will be in 2 months unless there's a change in schedule, we will be announcing a number of Republican sponsors as well of this bill, of these bills. And we continue to inform the governor's office about the progress of the legislation and get very encouraging response from both staff. And in particular, we had a very positive conversation with First Lady Tammy Murphy, who, as many of you know, is championing Nurture New Jersey throughout the state, and recognize that the Bill of Rights is something that this state should enact and put in place to demonstrate our commitment to not just children and infants, but to families and to collective impact. So as of now, we are optimistic and in a great frame of mind about where we are getting to and how fast we are getting there in terms of the legislation. At the same time, there's a really important element of all of this, which involves when and how do we get resources to this effort? And that is making progress as well. In each of the last 2 years, we have submitted budget testimony to the legislature soliciting funding for both the planning and execution of family success networks, community directed and community located and community operated. This year, with the resurgence in state revenues and also with the prospect of making intelligent and insightful use of the American Rescue Plan funding from the federal government, as well as new resources the state is going to realize from the opioid settlement with Johnson & Johnson, and with the onset of cannabis sales and cannabis tax revenues. And both those sources of funding are by statute directed towards communities and families that fit within the framework of what family success is pursuing in the state. We're asking for $70 million in the coming year to support the build out of family success networks, and over the subsequent 2 years, growing to $400+ million. Those dollars, however they are appropriated and in whatever amount, will support the work of members of this learning community and of the organizations and communities that are served by them. And whereas in the midst of the pandemic, we were very discreet about asking for money, we believe this is both the time, place, and the rare opportunity with the influx of federal dollars to move beyond that. And we will circulate to all of you and to other members who are not here our budget testimony and a pro forma distribution of those funds using demographic and geographic data to suggest that if you were to fairly distribute funding to build out these networks in the places where their needs are greatest, then this would be a formula that makes sense. And I'm happy to say that the Family Success Institute itself, principally Charlie Venti, Tom Blattner, and others, have helped put together the data. Gina Haranis, I should mention as well, that sort of organized this formulation of how to distribute funds reasonably. And we will be sharing that with the legislature as well. You will get that in the post-meeting mailings we generally send out. And I think that,
Timothy, I think that is a perfect segue into our guests. And we planned it this way, didn't we? So as Tim mentioned, we have two sponsors in the Assembly for the Community Recovery and Family Success Act. And I would like to first introduce Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter from Passaic, who represents Passaic and Bergen County. And Assemblywoman Sumter is a tireless advocate for kids and families. She has a tremendous background in health as well as social justice. She is the first woman to be chair of the Black Caucus in the New Jersey Legislative Assembly. She also has a recent honor. One of our learning community member organizations is the Children's Aid and Family Services in Bergen County, which is one of the premier agencies in the state. And Ms. Sumter it's just been announced that Ms. Sumter is going to assume the president and CEO of that organization. So congratulations on that front. And just a couple other references. One is that in our learning community, we have Rose Zeltzer, who's been a stalwart friend for years and years, and Joe Panicello, who are leaders in your new organization, Assemblywoman, and they can't wait for you to get there. And then finally, and maybe this is the best endorsement of all, is that Assemblywoman Sumter is very close friends with Carolyn McCombs, who is a member of our Family Success Institute board, the head of a fantastic Family Success Center in Patterson, and the chair of our racial and ethnic equity work group. So Assemblyman, we are so happy that you're here. We're honored that you're here, and we can't wait to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom and Tim. I got to hear a lot about what the charge is in Trenton. Good morning to everyone. I am super excited to be with you. We're talking about things that are part of my passion and in my wheelhouse. As you heard Tom share, I'm going to be joining Children's Aid and Family Services as their president and CEO. Dr. Bob Jones has been a friend. The agency has done some remarkable work, and I've partnered with them for well over 10 years. Literally, when the opportunity presented itself, I was rolling up my sleeves and said, what do you need? I'm on it. And Bob mentioned, hey, I'd like you to consider this role. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a different approach. That's a different ask than what I'm accustomed to. But after much thought, and talking with the board members, peers, my family, this is an opportunity to really double down in mission work that I'm committed to. I've partnered with a number of you, and you mentioned Reverend Carolyn McCombs. Literally, I remember when she started her program in the city of Patterson, the reunification of families, teaching successful relationships, evidence-based, making sure we're taking care of the most vulnerable has been my life's work. The exciting time, which is unlike any time I've experienced in my adult lifetime of a state with money. It's a different problem to have. Different problem to have. For New Jersey, one of the things I'm most proud of is advocates such as yourself who really amplify the needs of families, the most vulnerable who don't have time to come to Trenton to share their stories and their testimonies about how they're trying to make ends meet, let alone care for a loved one who may have a disability, special needs, need trauma-informed care. They just work and they struggle through it, and they're like the train that could. And when life throws them punches, they pretty much dust themselves off and keep going. So if we can be of assistance, and it's a large population, and what I also like to amplify is that it doesn't know partisan politics when you're caring for a loved one. It's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's not the Green Party, it's not independent. right? It's your child, it's your spouse, it's your sibling that you're now caring for because your parents have transitioned on, and folks are living longer. So that's a great thing, but we also have to make sure that we have resources. And then when we come to our children who have needs, I was, double down in the space last year with a lot of you when we were in the pandemic, and one of the areas that was looking for a funding cut to save dollars and keep them locked in a safe box was for the school-based youth services. Unfathomable to me. When we knew that every report said that the anxiety, depression, social distancing had an impact on our children and our families. And this was a space where we had professionals and service providers connecting with our young people. So now, as we look to the future, how we can do things better, how we can create a space for New Jerseyans to thrive. And when I learned of this bill from Tim and Tom and learned that Assemblyman Reverend Atkins would be the sponsor of this bill, I was more than happy to sign on as a co-prime sponsor. I'm very judicious in what I lend my muscle to, simply because you can't fight for everything because you're not going to win every battle. But when it's the right thing to do and going to help the masses for just, pennies on the dollar, truly pennies on the dollar, it will make the difference in people's lives. And that's in fact why I joined the legislature, to have an impact in the service provider community, to make sure that we're supporting our agencies who don't complain. As I heard coming on, during the pandemic, everyone was doing what they needed to do to keep our families safe. There were no complaints. We're overwhelmed. We're not earning enough. We're worried about our own families at home. Not one of those complaints surfaced to the top. I didn't get one email saying that. I got an email saying I need PPP. I got an email saying we need to make sure our families have a broadband connection, have devices, so we can stay connected with the providers and do virtual programming. That's commitment. And for that, any day, I will stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone who is really putting themselves out there, putting those testimonies and stories out there. And this piece of legislation is just one of the connectors to make life just a little bit easier with the council that can really support the needs of this very vulnerable population. So I'm excited to be a prime sponsor in this endeavor. What we will need from you all, because as you know, when there is money, everyone is pulling at the till. We're trying to be good stewards as we would, and as you all have been with your agencies and with your families of the resources, but we need to tell the stories of what the difference this investment would make, right? What impact this council will have for families statewide, not just in one county, but literally every county. So I know we like to be workhorses. I know we like to double down in that space, but what we're going to need is bipartisan telling the story, because when we're asking for money that's associated with these councils, and I think it's the right thing to do, we need to be sure that they know it's, one, money planted in good soil, two, that it will have the intellectual skill and professionals who are very much in tune with what the needs are, and three, that is evidence-based. Programs that have measurements and outcomes that are supported. So I will hold it there, Tom. I don't know if there was going to be a Q&A, but just know Reverend Atkins and I will be working hard. It's his first time through a budget cycle to push this over the top, but we will need support of the advocacy community so that when it comes to, we can put the resolution forth, we can put the bill forth, but when it comes to making sure it stays in the budget language, it stays funded as a legislative initiative, that's where we need your voices.
Wow. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. You have summed up what we are all about, and we're so proud for you to be our partner. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Does anybody have a question for the Assemblywoman, and or we can move on to her co-sponsor, who are also incredibly proud to be with us today. And to introduce him, I would like to introduce our friend and colleague, Debbie Ann Anderson. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. We look forward to working with you. Debbie Ann Anderson, I met Debbie Ann when she was working with Jim Horn at the United Way in Union County, and they started one of the first local family success initiatives together. And Debbie now is the director of the Department of Human Services in Union County, and is a tireless worker on behalf of kids and families. And Deb, I think you're going to do an introduction of the Assemblywoman's co-sponsor for this bill. So thank you so much. Deb?
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. It's my first day of vacation, so sorry about the casual dress, but I wanted to make sure I was here to really introduce Assemblyman Atkins to the team. His motto is grace and peace. It's a familiar phrase that is cited, and Assemblyman is just a visionary leader here in Union County. He is so committed to meeting people where they are and meeting the needs. You know, he's a senior pastor and founder of Zion Family Worship Center Church. He's also a senior member and director of Computer Task Force with focus on process improvement. He's a certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt. One of the things that when you talk to the Assemblyman, his commitment to family, his children, a lot of times when you see his social media posts, he's like, I married my best friend, and it's absolutely a true statement. And with he and his wife, Dr. Cynthia Atkins, they do food pantries in the community to make sure that residents who are in need get the resources that they can provide. He has made history with being mayor in Roselle, councilman, Board of Education, so very long history of public service life. And Assemblyman Atkins is a true servant of God and of a resident of Roselle. He is humble and he serves to meet the needs of people. Reverend Atkins, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to your sponsorship on this bill and your commitment to the community and the state of New Jersey. I introduce Assemblyman Atkins.
Thank you so very much. I'm so happy and excited to be here to talk to you about my passion and to talk to you. I think Debbie Ann did wow. I was like, who she's talking about? But it's awesome to have people such as Debbie Ann, who's been a champion for Union County and for families. And when I looked at the bill, first thing I said to myself, wow, this is me 100%. Our theme has always been about, thank you, Tim. It's always been about meeting the needs of the people. And that's so important. It's more than just saying it, but now we're at a point where we need to put actions behind those words, not only as a county, but now literally as a state. And this particular bill, and reading through it, and one of the reasons why I sponsored it is because that's exactly what we need. We need to put resources behind things that we've said for such a long time. I'm so happy that my big sister came on and signed on to the bill because that only gives us even more traction, and it gives us the force that we need in order to get this through the finish line. We've been very instrumental locally in providing not only a nonprofit organization called New Destiny that my wife is a director in. But we literally feed anywhere from about 500 to about 750 families, 50 people on a weekly basis. And we literally, in terms of percentage, I am a Six Sigma Black Belt. We literally increased our service footprint in the area as a result of partnerships with Debbie Ann and her organization, and Jim Horn, his organization, and some of the other local people that were willing to come beside us. It's all about that. It's all about being preemptive in our approach. How can we change this narrative? And the way we do that is making sure that we have the right funding in place. First of all, we got to have the right people in place, the right partners in place, have the right plan in place. And as a result, we'll get the right result. And what I'm seeing here with just what I've read over the past, wow, it's been 100 days now. I see that we now have the right partnerships in line. One of the things I know that we're going to be needing just in my short tenure is to be able to paint a picture. And that picture just can't be, county specific, but it got to be literally statewide. And I'm sure you already know that. But I do want to mention that because that's very important. Having programs is great, but being able to measure its success is even better. And also being able to paint that picture and show everybody, regardless to whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. These are the facts. This is what's needed. In order for us to move New Jersey into the opportunity state, we got to make sure that our kids and families have every opportunity that they need. And in order to do that, we need resources and programs. It's all about three things for me. It's all about process, people, and tools. We got to make sure we have the right people in place. We got to make sure we have the right processes and programs in place. And more important, we got to make sure that we have the right tools in place to measure our outcomes so that we can use that for other things that we want to do down the line. This is my first time, and I'm once again so happy to have a champion with me and to guide me through the whole process. But we stand here as champions to this because that's what we've been about. That's what our life work is all about, and that is meeting the needs of the people. Thank you, Debbie Ann. You did such a wonderful job. It's awesome working with you, and I look forward to just expanding our relationship and making an impact, not only through our county, which you've done very well, but doing it throughout the whole state. This should be a model in the state that should go everywhere. We have the opportunity right now to make this a model so that they could use that model elsewhere. And I think the opportunity is now. Thanks for the conversations with Tim and Charles. This is the opportunity now to do that. And I think that we are positioned well to do that. We just went through the pandemic. We're on the outskirts of it. Now it's time for us to invest in what we need to invest in so that we get the results that we need to get. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I look forward to championing this and helping it get through the finish line. Thank you. I think you may be on mute.
Thank you so much. And this is a tremendous freshman endeavor. I mean, what a way to make a mark on the state of New Jersey. Absolutely amazing. And Assemblywoman, you said something that I think we've all been thinking about, because there are a number of us who've been toiling at these issues for years and years and years. And then we have some young people who have just amazing idealistic ideas. This probably is a one moment in time. This is, showing my age, I was involved with the war on poverty. Some of the entitlements worked. some of the investments in the community didn't work because of a number of the things that the Assemblyman just mentioned. So we are just absolutely blessed that you are, you and the Assemblyman are going to, take up this cause because it probably is, at least in my lifetime, a one-time opportunity. So thank you both so much. One of the things that, before we get into our discussion of the work groups, is that both Assembly persons mentioned the value and the role of community-based nonprofit organizations. And as we all know, the state of New Jersey has not been generous to the nonprofit sector the way it has been to the public sector at the state and county and local levels. And one of the issues that we want to raise through this process that is, unless we can find ways to provide resources and support and infrastructure and decent salaries to people who work in community-based organizations, particularly grassroots organizations, this is not going to work. Assemblyman, you talked about the people. Well, we need to attract the best people that we can find in the country and in the state into the nonprofit sector to carry out this vision, or it's simply not going to happen. And we're very lucky. Assemblywoman, you mentioned the school-based effort to get that money back in the budget. And your friend Bob Garachi was very involved in that. And Bob has been talking to us. He's been a terrific
I
supporter.
see Bob on here.
Yeah.
Listen, no stronger advocate. You all have Bob, you're good to go.
And so Bob has been talking with us about having a group work on what will it take to for the state to invest in the nonprofit infrastructure, both capital and in terms of human resources, that this vision can actually become a reality. And Bob, I think that you are going to just take a couple minutes to talk about some of the ideas that you've been thinking about, and particularly why the Assembly persons are on with us. So Bob, we're glad you're here.
Well, thank you, Tom. And yes, indeed, just a couple of minutes, and greetings to my Assemblywoman, who is probably just right around the corner from me here in Patterson. Assemblyman Atkins, it's a pleasure to meet you, if only virtually. I know most of you, I think a lot of you know me. I serve as CEO of New Jersey Community Development Corporation. We are a nonprofit community development and social service organization based in Patterson, serving 4,000 children and families each day in a variety of programs and services. And because I'm not busy enough in my day job, I get involved with folks like Tom and Charlie and Tim, and sometimes we blue sky it. And, we need to work to dramatically strengthen our sector. When I opened up my email this morning, I saw the headline for an article, and the headline said, "Former New Jersey governors call for bold investments in New Jersey's water infrastructure." And I don't think any of us would argue that that's a laudatory goal, and we need to do it. But what if we woke up and we saw former New Jersey governors call for bold investments in New Jersey's nonprofit sector? Wouldn't that be wonderful? And quite frankly, we have enough friends, including a couple with us right now, who I think can help us to do that. There have been years of underfunding. I don't have to recount it for you. Years of underfunding of the nonprofit sector. Now, in the education world, and one of the things we do here is run a charter school for 900 students. But in the education world, the legislature adopted a new funding formula a few years ago that is aiming to correct chronic underfunding of public schools. Just this year alone, Governor Murphy, to his credit, has dedicated a new $650 million to augment education spending. And what that's meant, for example, in the city of Newark alone, Newark will realize an additional $120 million this year to try and bring some parity to education funding. And so that's something that I think we should all embrace. But what about the nonprofit sector? The cost of the work that we do are only going up, and there have been no cost of living increases for the work that we do for many years. I think the number is actually 8. But what's happened over those 8 years? Skyrocketing cost, right? Inflation is now the highest it's been in more than 50 years. And at times, it seems like there are a few people who care about the infrastructure of the nonprofit sector. Just parenthetically, I looked at my agency's insurance premium from 8 years ago when it was $173,000. We just renewed about 3 weeks ago at $371,000. And that, I'm proud to say, is with a pretty clean insurance record, yet the costs are just skyrocketing. And sometimes I don't think that those in the public sector fully realize what the cost would be to the state and to taxpayers without the work that we do. And when we care for someone, let's say someone in a partial care program, someone who has a mental health issue, well, that might cost the government $150 a day. But if that same partial care program were run by the state, I think the cost would easily double, if not triple that. And what about the prevention aspect? How many millions, untold millions, do we save the taxpayers by our work that prevent hospitalizations or other more costly treatment modalities? And so I think, and I've had this conversation with Tom and Tim and Charlie, I think it's time to talk about a plan to dramatically invest in New Jersey's nonprofit infrastructure. And in some ways, there's never been a better time. The assemblywomen and assemblymen will tell you that the state is so flush with cash right now that no one's ever seen anything like it. And in my own county here, Passaic County, $98 million has been received through the American Rescue Plan. And in my city of Patterson, another 63.7 million through the American Rescue Plan. But I haven't heard anyone talk about using these funds, even in a one-time way, to help shore up the nonprofit sector. And so let me just close by saying, I think that the charge of such an effort would have to be more developed and refined, and a lot of people, including many of you on this call, would want to be involved, I think. But I think the message that I want to convey this morning is that now is the time for us to come together and advocate strongly, and indeed fight, for vital investments in the nonprofit sector. Without this type of investment, our viability as a sector will wane. And countless beneficiaries of our services will be the ones who feel the brunt of it. And so I think this is something we have to do, and that's my message this morning. Thank you, Tom.
Bob, again, thank you so much. And this is a volunteer effort of the heart by Bob. He's been talking about this for a number of years. And honestly, the whole vision of family success is it's organized around the concept of community, community, community. That these issues that we're talking about, both in terms of responding to people's needs, but supporting their journeys to success, are increasingly going to be dependent upon the viability and the strength of the nonprofit sector in the community, and particularly smaller grassroots organizations who are doing an amazing job without the appropriate support or recognition. So we're going to be putting together a group, hopefully with Bob's leadership, that is going to come up with a simple but straightforward platform to support the nonprofit sector as we move into the family success era. So Bob, thank you so much. And if there are folks who are interested in joining this part of our effort, please let us know. And as with everything else, we'll do it together. So Bob, I really appreciate your voice this morning. And I am also noticing the assembly person's heads nodding. So I think this is a very timely conversation, and it's the time to do something. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Pleasure.
Tom?
Yes, sir.
If I could, just for a quick second. Both the assemblywoman and the assemblyman made critical points about telling the stories and making sure that our whole efforts are outcome focused. So what we would like to do, and I'll ask Tim the best way for us to do this is, we've started to collect research studies around the impact of investments in early childhood education, issues around fatherhood and increases in child support payments. There's a lot of national research, there's state research, but we do want help in gathering information for the Institute to help us as we frame the stories about what investments can do, what proven investments, the differences that can be made. I guess I want to ask Tim how we should gather the best way. I'm certainly willing to receive anything from anyone, but I'll get to defer to Tim about how we collect that data. I didn't want to miss that opportunity. I'm sorry. That's why I jumped in.
Well, I think the easiest, just to move things along, I think the easiest way to receive information from anyone in this group and in the organizations that you are connected with is to email or reach out to any of us. My email and phone number are on almost every communication that you've received. And I'll put it in the chat so that in case there's any question about that, you can reach me, but there are many others who will help ensure that that message gets to the right place quickly and that we collect that information to use it effectively.
Thanks. Thank you, Charlie, for that. And before we move into the work groups, Lucy and George have been putting into the chat the recommendation that we connect with the Center for Nonprofits, which we absolutely need to do, because again, this is only going to occur through collaboration. And also, we've had some conversations about reaching out to the philanthropic community around these efforts, which we will do as well. But as with everything we're talking about, these changes, these are not incremental changes. Investing in success and divesting from distress is a transformational shift in just about everything. And Assemblyman, what we've been looking at are three different types of measures: effectiveness, which is outcomes and evidence-based, as the Assemblywoman mentioned; efficiency, and investing in success is far more efficient, as Bob said, than continuing to pick up the pieces of shattered lives when they don't have what they need in the first place. And then the third measure, which to me over time has become the most important, is what do the residents who actually use these services think the benefit is? And increasingly, you hear that residents don't think that this sector is actually being as helpful as we could be. So effectiveness, efficiency, and resident satisfaction, there really are our three hallmarks. Assemblywoman?
I just want to be sure that as you're talking to legislators, because remember, there's over 700 departments and commissions in the state of New Jersey. There's nothing better than a short testimonial on the impact from families, because our attention span is challenged at this point in time. So while you put all of the information together, and Reverend Atkins can attest to this, because we're getting a lot of stuff fast and furious, email boxes flooded. Truly, the testimonials, short pieces with, fund, 838, or vote yes on it. And make sure the governor's office is aware, so they're looking for it also. So if you haven't invited anyone from the governor's office there, I know the commissioner was on earlier, please make sure you amplify it with them as well. And I probably wasn't supposed to tell you those tricks.
Oh, absolutely. and you're right, both in terms of the brevity, but also I think that family voice is what this is all about. So thank you for that. So I think if any other thoughts before we move into our work group updates. Timothy, I will turn the agenda to you.
It looks like he stepped away, Tom. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I'll
Yeah.
look, so I'll get us on this
Okay.
agenda. So as you all know, and Tim mentioned earlier that our learning community has formed a number of work groups that are looking at sort of threshold questions around the various policies that impact families throughout the state. And we have work groups that have been working on early childhood success, positive youth development, financial security, fathers and families, parent leadership. And now, Bob, I think we're talking about another work group that's looking at the health of the nonprofit sector. And we've had reports from several of these groups in a previous meeting. So what we're asking is that for early childhood success, fathers and families, and parent leadership, we get brief updates from the conveners of those groups, starting with Gloria Avtansky, who is the head of the United Way of Central Jersey, to talk about the progress in the early childhood success work group.
Thanks, Tom. If you remember, the early childhood success position paper was the first document that was produced and shared with the learning community. It was developed by Cindy Lammy, and Cindy and I are working on an update. Our work group has met a few times. The challenge is time in finalizing the document. And we have as our standard bearer the financial stability position paper that was developed by Tim and Charlie and that work group. Our group is focusing on prenatal to age 8. And right now we've completed the healthy infants and toddlers and preschoolers sections. And we're continuing to work on the early elementary students and community context. So hopefully by the time we have our next learning community meeting, we will have a draft to share with everyone. So thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Gloria. And I will mention that one of the features, I think, of just about everybody in our learning community is that people are not only talking the talk, but they're walking the walk. And I just have to mention that at one of our future meetings, Gloria and her team have put together an initiative for early childhood success in Middlesex County, which is called Little Hands, Big Futures. And it is truly a community mobilization to improve outcomes for families with very young children. So thank you for that, Gloria. Karen?
Good morning again, everyone. The Fathers and Families Work Group has been working behind the scenes to craft our position statement. And I'm happy to say we have a meeting coming up on Monday, April 25th at 10 a.m. It is a virtual meeting. If you are interested in being a part of the work group or attending the meeting, please let me know. My email is in the chat, but I'm hoping, as was stated earlier, by our next learning community meeting, we should have a formal position statement to share with you. I'm excited about the progress that we've been able to make. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Karen. Kathy Rowe, Parent Leadership.
Yes, I'm happy to say that we have our next meeting on April 20th at 10 a.m. It is also a virtual meeting. So if anybody who wanted to join our group but didn't get a chance to, Diana Cooper and I are co-chairs. I'll put our emails in the chat and you can feel free to join us. We are working on our policy paper. And like you, Karen, and others, we hope to have it completed by the next learning community meeting. Ron, anything you want to add?
Great, thanks, Kathy. Before we get into the community action forums, which Tim is going to talk about, I wanted to sort of reiterate something that the Assemblywoman and the Assemblyman said, which is, we're working on these policy papers, not only to look at short-term actions, but to look at what it's going to take to make a sea change for the future. And that these, as they both said, these policy papers are not, they're not partisan. They're not for one sector. They're for all parties to hopefully support. So all of this work is really it transcends politics. It transcends special interests. It can only happen through collective interest. So I just wanted to say that because I think throughout this session this morning, I hope that everybody can see the hope that is offered by this movement, but it's only going to happen but through cooperation and collaboration and not through competition. So I wanted to add that. And with that, I'd like to turn to Timothy to talk about our Community Action Forum work.
Thank you, Tom, and I apologize for stepping away. I'm overseeing 2 dogs and a toddler, and I was trying to prevent conflict between one and the other because dogs are very friendly, but they tend to bowl over the toddler when the toddler's not stably set. The community action forums have become an extraordinary next step in what Family Success Institute is striving to do in being able to shed light on the issues we've heard so eloquently described today. And the policy papers that preceded them were really a mechanism to attract small group within the learning community participation in defining, not just on a grand scale, but quite in some granular sense, what it takes to be financially secure, what it is that fatherhood represents and how to achieve that in community settings, the importance and the centrality of parent leadership and healthy parents to producing healthy children, etc. Each one of those work groups focuses on an area that's been spoken about here, but more important, that really is representative of how we achieve family success. So in the course of that, and in the effort to broaden and elevate and increase the volume of community voice and community direction, we developed the idea of community action forums as a means of doing that. And I have to give a shout out to one of our prime sponsors, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, that embraced this idea and has been supportive of our efforts to both develop it, but also is in the process of approving a grant that will really help fund a really robust effort in this area. It's terribly exciting. And as that foundation consistently calls out, how do we address the social determinants of health? This is very much at the heart of that. Our plans now for those community action forums, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Rowe, who's been instrumental in this, have evolved since meeting with a planning group of members of the learning community, about 10 in number, that we assembled quickly after we got a sort of a yellow to green light from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, to how to organize these in a way that would successfully elicit community input in a meaningful way. And we changed our overall approach based on our first meeting. And before turning it over to Kathy, I would just add, that group was an ad hoc group, and members of this community here and others that have thoughts during and after this meeting should feel free to both join that conversation, communicate with Kathy and others directly. And with that, Kathy, to describe where we are in the process, I turn it to you.
Thanks so much, Tim. You know, one of the reasons I am so, I just love this organization so much is because of the incredible wealth of people in our learning community. And when we first started thinking about these regional forums, we were thinking pretty traditionally. You know, we'll do 4 regional forums, you know, probably 1 south, 1 north, 1 central, maybe at a college, you know, invite, you know, the usual suspects. And when our group got together to meet and talk about this, it was amazing how quickly that idea changed into this new and exciting idea, which is that we wanted to, instead of, you know, these traditional ways to hear from people, which we end up hearing from the same people, you know, we all know that, but instead to break it wide open and have many listening sessions and input sessions and feedback sessions around the state so that we don't just hear from professionals, we don't just talk to each other, but we have opportunities to hear from community members, to engage the community in this family success movement, and to have them be a part of it. Now, I was part of this meeting, but I had to jump out early. So I'd like to throw it open to some of the folks who were there to share what we talked about in this process. Charlie, I know, you were a big part of this. Dominic Lee, I had hoped would be here today because he was instrumental in shifting our thinking.
I'll just say something quick and maybe segue it back to Tim because and Tom, who I know had a follow-up meeting with discussion with Dominique, but basically the group said exactly what Kathy just shared and felt that if we were to support smaller groups, 10 to 12 to 15 in local communities, we would have an opportunity to attract people who normally would not come to the table, people who may be most affected by the issues that were being discussed, to join in a much more friendly and safe environment. And rather than 4 forums, to look more at 15 to 20 forums across the state and to provide resources to the local groups, learning community members and others who might participate in hosting those meetings at these welcoming and safe, environments for people in the community. So I'm going to punt it back to Tim, who has a little more information.
I don't think that the most important message all of us here should hear is that this is a process in development, but the goals are very clear. We want to use mechanisms that will first elicit, encourage, and then document the voices of community in how we can best achieve family success in each of the areas that are policy papers, but also related to the communities they live in and the circumstances that they're experiencing. And the second half of this, which will be a statewide summit, is one in which those different groups can first come together. There'll be some recording of what they have produced to date, but also interact one with the other. And it is essential that in that environment, we bring to it not just members of the learning community, not just those of us here, but those who would normally not find their way into that setting. And then in that same community voiced moment, we want to bring leaders from government, business, and the nonprofit community and philanthropy to hear clearly that there is a message there and a method to getting from where we are today to a framework and then the execution of a plan for family success that I think will revolutionize, if we're successful, revolutionize how government begins to approach the question of providing service, and it goes beyond that. But the key here is using the forums to elevate and amplify community voice and community sensibility. And that's what our goal is. The rest will take care of itself.
And let me just give you an example too, is that, we're having our parent conference in June. And, as we were having these discussions, I thought, well, this would be a perfect opportunity. Parents already plan to come out, they have childcare, and we're actually going to turn our conference, a workshop in our conference, into a feedback and listening session so that parents can have a voice. Parents that normally are not at the table or are not invited to conferences or regional forums. And I know that so many members of the learning community have that same access to, having smaller groups come out and really getting committed and hearing. We always hear about the family voice, right? Well, oftentimes there are so many families that have no voice. So this is a chance for us to do it differently. And I think it's really exciting. I hope you guys will consider you know, reaching out and talking, you know, talking about how you can be involved in this process as well. I think it's a great opportunity for communities.
So this concept of, and I, you know, even in talking to parents and community residents, even the term voice is beginning to be obsolete. We're beginning to talk about power shifting. I guess sort of the moderate term is power sharing, but I think that unless we can find ways to get people who have not had an opportunity to become involved in decisions that impact their lives, both at the policy level, but also at the individual level, things are going to stay the same. And so this endeavor is not only about the work of these groups that are working and trying to think about the future and what it looks like, but finding ways to communicate their thinking very simply and clearly to residents around the state, and then having the residents really give some solid feedback and have a strong role in determining, you know, the direction that we all go in. So any thoughts about this? I mean, we're still in the process of developing what this will, you know, completely look like. But again, with everything else, it's going to take all of us working together to make this this happen. So any initial feedback around the direction we're going? Anybody?
Just real quick, this is Dave Armstrong again. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity again for being invited to the table, and for you guys to really think about how impactful a family voice or how impactful a family perspective could be. Because when I think about sustainability, I think about the parents that are in need of this service, that are not co-designing the service and support that they are given, and not sitting at the table. I didn't make this up, but I just want to say nothing for me without me. I mean, ask me what you think I need, and let's see how the outcomes can be by getting that information from the community, from the people that you are serving and supporting. But it has to be intentional, again, like I said before, and it has to be authentic, not a check mark process, not to say we have families at the table, so we did good. No, we need to really listen to what we have to say.
Thank you, David.
So this is Ron Shelley-san. Hi, New York Trust. So we're doing this on very small scale, or we're trying to do this on a very small scale. And I think some of the things that I would just kind of throw into the conversation is, one, all of these conversations are already happening. They may not be happening at the tables that we normally sit, but they are happening in community and at community tables. And oftentimes we approach this as, how do we get people to our tables, as opposed to how do we find out where the conversations are going on, and how do we create relationships that lead to people being invited to the tables where the conversations are already happening in the local spaces, so that we understand both the context and the ideas, and help inform what we're trying to do. So I think there's a little bit of a space for growth in thinking about how we propose this work. It's not always about bringing people to our tables, right? It's about being open to going to other places to integrate and to respect and honor the spaces that already exist. So I just wanted to put that into it. And then I think the other part, you know, and I've said this in the past, we've done a lot of work around leadership development, and what ends up happening is, when we, meaning the sector, not the trust, right? But what ends up happening is that we tend to then have a lot of people who have developed skills and no organizations who are willing to, or have the infrastructure in place to actually integrate them into their organizations. And so I come back to, what's the organizational work that needs to happen that actually starts to think about, what are the budgetary lines, what are the positions, what are the consulting responsibilities that can be open to and accessible to community leaders, family leaders in organizations that already exist. If we don't open up our spaces in a formal way, we could do leadership work till we're blue in the face, and it's always going to be antagonistic work. It's not going to be integrated work. So those are the two things that I would just kind of put into the conversation.
So Ron, let me say about both of those ideas. I think one of the reasons that we made the shift from our traditional thinking that Kathy mentioned is to go to folks who are already doing this work and capitalize on the tremendous work that you're doing out there. So an example of this would be for us to collaborate, and that you would bring your work and your residents into this process, because that's the only way it's going to work. And then I think the other point that I'd like to make is, and I was struck by the news this morning. There was an Urban League report that's come out about income disparities by race, and we're not making any progress. You know, it's just stuck. And the other one had to do with First Lady's report on Black infant mortality, and they're all connected. And unless we can commit ourselves to changing who gets what for what reason, we're going to continue to be stuck. So both of your our points are not only well taken, but we hope that we can include you in our planning so we can be true to what you're suggesting. Anybody else?
Yes, hey Tom, so George, so two quick things real quickly. So picking up on those points made by you, Tom, and Ron, when I recall in that Community Action Forum call, we did talk about, given the sort of intensity that we were looking at from an engagement and a geographic, distribution standpoint, that it's going to be critical that we do this in tandem with key on the ground players. So not only does this allow non-traditional community voices to have much more direct input into the work, but also provides our key nonprofit partners to be directly involved. The other thing we talked about is, and it kind of picking up on David's point, is if we're going to really be committed to moving from being resident informed to resident owned, community informed to community owned, that we should think about the then what after the forums. Is there a what's the mechanism that exists to continually engage community voices once the action forums and the statewide summit occurs? Do we think about adding community voices into the learning community? Because at this point, unless I'm wrong, we have organizational reps here, which is fine, because we got great organizations that have direct engagement with the community. But do we think about adding non-organizational, I'm not coming up with the right description here, but community voices that serve on the learning community and our work groups and so forth.
Those are both great points, George. And I think, Dave Ellis at the beginning talked about his disdain for strategic planning. And I think one of the things that is happening in the field is that strategic planning is sort of linear. And by the time you get to the finish of a strategic plan, the conditions have changed so quickly that the strategic plan is out of date. So I think all of these suggestions, every single one of them, are completely aligned with what our intentions are. And I think the challenge is for us to follow through all of them, and they've all been terrific. So anybody else have any thoughts? If
Tom,
not,
I'd just like to piggyback on what George said, which is we've invited a number of parent leaders to be on this meeting, part of the learning community. But I think if we're going to walk the walk, we've actually got to realize that, we're pretty much all paid to be here as agency people during our work time with childcare already taken care of. And so we have to think about changing our meeting times and being flexible in that so that we can have community voices join us. And the same thing with the summit. I would like us to think about how we can fund parent leaders to attend, that have taken place and have given feedback, how they can attend the summit so that we just don't say, well, we had a focus group and this is what they said, but actually keep people involved. And,
Yeah, 100% agree, 100% agree. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Alrighty, well, it's 10:03. And anybody have any final thoughts? If not, I would like to thank everybody for all the tremendous work you're doing, for bearing with us. This is it's a little bit of an unruly movement, but I think any movement that's successful has to be a little unruly. So we're going to have set up a date for next meeting, probably in 2 months, but we will be in touch. But in the meantime, there's a lot of activity, and any ideas or thoughts or suggestions or complaints or anything, please let us know, because this is a completely open process, a completely open field. And if we can figure out how to keep working together, I really do think we can make the change that we all desire. So thanks so much, and be well and see you soon.